the 20-minute incident. It was supposed to be an ordinary flight from New York to Dallas. Instead, it turned into one of the most horrifying mid-air tragedies in US aviation history. On April 17, 2018, a woman would board a Boeing 737 carrying 149 people to take a trip back to her home in Albuquerque, New Mexico. On Southwest Airlines, passengers aren't assigned specific seats. They simply just band together in groups and pick any seat that's available. The only one left for the woman was a seat in row 14, on the left side of the plane, next to a window. After making herself comfortable in her new spot, something unexpected would happen. After the plane took off, it spontaneously suffered a catastrophic engine failure at 32,000 feet. A fan blade broke loose, ripping through the engine casing and sending dangerous shrapnel into the plane's fuselage. One piece of debris struck a window, instantly blowing it out. And as you would guess, the window it struck would be none other than the woman's. In an instant, the 43-year-old mother of two was partially sucked out of the plane. The decompression was violent. Passengers scrambled in shock as the rushing wind pulled her torso outside, leaving her head and arms flailing violently into the sky. Desperate to save her, fellow passengers held onto her legs, trying to keep her body inside the plane with every ounce of their strength. Flight attendants fought chaos with calmness, urging everyone to remain seated while the crew prepared for an emergency descent. For 20 agonizing minutes, the cabin was a battleground between survival and disaster. Despite passengers' efforts, the vicious thrashing was too severe on the woman's body. By the time the crippled jet made its emergency landing in Philadelphia, she had passed away. Times like these reveal just how fragile safety can be at 30,000 feet in the air, and how a single shattered pane of glass can mean the difference between a peaceful ride to your destination and pure tragedy. The photo incident. It was a desperate escape. A young boy longed for adventure, for freedom beyond the confines of his home in Sydney, Australia. On February 21st, 1970, he slipped past security at the Sydney airport and crawled into the wheel well of a DC-8 jet that was headed for Tokyo. He thought he'd hidden himself safely away and that he was ready to be carried across the world. But stowaway flights carry a fatal flaw. Moments after takeoff, the landing gear began to retract. While the plane was flying, the wheel well doors opened, and the boy was suddenly exposed to the rushing sky. With no warning, he tumbled out, plummeting 200 feet to the ground, with his body slamming into the earth as horrified witnesses looked on. In a tragic twist, a photographer testing out a new camera lens wanted to give the device a try. He thought to himself, what's more breathtaking to photograph than a plane on the verge of takeoff? As he positioned himself and his new camera lens to take a photo of the plane flying, he would accidentally and unknowingly capture the boy's final fall. This incident would leave behind a tragic and haunting image of a body suspended midair just seconds before doom. His parents were devastated. Reports show that in response to him running away, they would travel with him overseas to satisfy his adventurous spirit. But even at that, he still kept running away, so they sent him to a boarding school to keep him grounded and protected. Nonetheless, the boy still escaped. I won't lie, it's cases like these that kinda put a damper on my mood. And as much as I talk about physical health and its safety on this channel, mental health is just as important. And so I'm happy to thank today's sponsor, BetterHelp. We cover a plethora of tragic incidents on this channel, and as most of you already know, when I'm doing research, usually every once in a while, I'll come across something extremely distressing. Odd enough, when I was younger, I'd never really communicate with anybody about how things like these would affect me mentally, nor would I ever reach out for help or social support. But as I grew older and lost some people in my life, it taught me the importance of opening up. During difficult times, my family and I have personally turned to therapy to work through our own trauma and stress. All of these videos are a constant reminder to us of how fragile life can be. No one should ever face their struggles alone. BetterHelp, the sponsor of this video, gives you a solid, accessible way to talk to a therapist whenever you need support. Start today and get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/atalkinghat. These videos revolve around real people with real stories to share, and most of the time, you guys also have your own trauma to reflect on. Never neglect yourself. Always reach out to someone who's willing to lend an ear. And don't think that you're not worth being heard, because you always are. The blender. Airports are supposed to be gateways of excitement, the place where journeys begin. But for one man at the Milan Malpensa airport, the runway became a place of unimaginable shock. In July 2023, a 35-year-old ground worker and father of two would slip past security and break onto the runway. The man didn't have any tickets and wasn't a plane passenger of any sort, so staff and security alike would tackle him down to the ground. However, upon breaking free from their grasps, he would begin climbing onto the side of the Airbus. As the plane began slowly powering up and got ready to take off, its sudden movement caused the man to fall off. Without a second to waste, the man would jump back up and run to the other side of the plane to climb on top of it again. However, as he was crossing the left side, the jet's ginormous engine would violently suck the man inside. A jet engine's blades are razor sharp and spin thousands of times per minute. Not to mention that the deeper you go inside of it, the hotter it gets. The man instantly was blended into a red mess. His remains were unrecognizable, and the only things that were assumed to be left behind were pieces of bone, tissue, and shredded clothing. Witnesses like the aircraft marshal said the force was so sudden and violent that there was absolutely no chance of escape. He'd go on to say that one moment, as the marshal, he was guiding the plane into position. The next moment, he sees the powerful vacuum of the engine ripping a man from the ground and dragging his body into its spinning blades. The sound was deafening. Passengers on board watched in shock, realizing what had just happened. Authorities later confirmed that the man passed away instantly. Colleagues described him as cheerful, hardworking, and devoted to his family. But his passing was a chilling reminder of the brutal physics at play in aviation. One simple misstep of being too close to an active engine can erase a life in seconds, or maybe even quicker. The Ghost Plane Incident. On the morning of August 14th, 2005, what began as a routine flight from Cyprus to Athens turned into one of the eeriest tragedies in aviation history. A Boeing 737 carrying 121 people climbed into the skies. But just minutes after takeoff, something was terribly wrong. The cabin pressurization system had been left in manual mode during pre-flight checks. As the aircraft ascended, oxygen levels dropped. Slowly, everyone on board began to lose consciousness. Passengers slumped in their seats. The pilots collapsed at the controls. And as for the plane, it became eerily silent on the inside and kept on flying at 34,000 feet in the sky on autopilot. For 2 hours, the plane would continuously fly in a circle above Athens. A massive aircraft, full of unconscious souls, drifting with no one in command. Fighter jets scrambled to intercept it, peering into the cockpit only to see the captain's chair empty and the co-pilot slumped lifelessly over the controls. Meanwhile, oxygen masks dangled uselessly from the ceiling. But then, one man moved. Flight attendant Andreas Prodromou had regained partial consciousness thanks to a portable oxygen supply. In a desperate final act, he entered the cockpit and tried to save the aircraft. Witnesses believe he attempted to steer it away from Athens, sparing the city from catastrophe. At 12:04, nearly 3 hours after takeoff, the plane eventually ran out of fuel. Despite the man's efforts to try to land it properly away from the city, the Boeing plunged into a hillside near Grammatiko in Greece, leaving nobody on board to survive its crash. Investigators concluded it was a costly mix of human error and mechanical oversight. A simple switch left in the wrong position, a mistake no one caught in time. Although devastating, the lives on the plane are still remembered till this day, especially the heroic man who was able to veer the plane away from Athens city and stop it from crashing on hundreds of unsuspecting citizens. Oh, the humanity. On May 6, 1937, a luxurious German passenger airship, marketed as the peak of elegance and wealth, attempted to dock at the Lakehurst Naval Air Station in New Jersey after a transatlantic flight. Dozens of spectators gathered to watch the massive Zeppelin. It was 804 feet long, which is nearly twice the length of a Boeing 747. It also weighed nearly 500,000 pounds. But it only carried 97 people. The beautiful airship began to descend from the clouds, preparing itself to land. Then, without warning, disaster struck. You see, the ship was maneuvering during a thunderstorm and garnered a static electric charge within its metal frame. Normally, this wouldn't be too much of an issue if the ship was using helium, as it was quite literally designed to use it. But for political reasons in 1937, the United States refused to export helium to Germany, and so individuals would go on to fill the airship with hydrogen instead, an extremely flammable gas. Even though the Germans knew this was very dangerous, they did it anyway. And so, as the Hindenburg hovered above the mooring mast, it dropped its landing ropes, which is theorized to have created a spark. In a flash, gigantic flames erupted near the tail of the ship, and within seconds, the entire airship was engulfed in fire, while it was still flying in the sky. The hydrogen gas keeping the Zeppelin afloat ignited into a breathing inferno, turning the proud airship into a falling torch as it floated 200 feet off the ground. People inside struggled for survival as the interior became an oven of smoke and flames. Many people and others collapsed from smoke inhalation. Ultimately, passengers became faced with the horrifying reality that their only escape from the ship was to jump 200 feet to the ground. People leapt from the burning craft as it collapsed to the ground in just 34 seconds. The screams of passengers became mixed with the roar of fire, and terrifying enough, 36 people would perish from this disaster. But what really made this tragedy unforgettable was the live radio broadcast. Remember that this was going on in 1937? Many people never saw or even heard of things like this, especially on radio. Reporter Herbert Morrison, who was covering the landing, was overcome with horror as he cried out words that would echo through history.
All the humanity and all the passengers screaming around it. I don't do it. I can't talk to people.
Oh, the humanity, a phrase that became synonymous with the disaster, leaving many others to shout the same thing whenever witnessing another tragedy unfold. The Hindenburg is a haunting reminder of how quickly human ambition can be consumed by flame and political strife. In terms of recent politics in the US, a lot has been going on. But don't let violence scare you, and don't let strife divide you. Love your neighbor as you would love yourself, and treat others how you wish to be treated. Keep your head up always, and as usual, have a happy day.